Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the National Black and Latino Economic Summit. Today, we're going to be talking, we're having a Black and Latino Affordable Housing Roundtable to discuss home ownership for Black and Latinos in this post-COVID-19 pandemic. My name is Marcos Morales. I'm the Executive Director of Hogar Hispano Inc., and I'm very excited and very proud to introduce you all to the FHFA Acting Director, Sandra Thompson. And let me tell you a little bit about Sandra. On June 23rd of 2021, the White House appointed her as the Acting Director of the Federal Housing Finance Agency. Since 2013, Ms. Thompson has served as Deputy Director of the Division of Housing's Missions and Goals, where she oversaw FHFA's housing and regulatory policy, capital policy, financial analysis, fair lending, and all mission activities for Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and the federal home loan banks. Prior to joining FHFA, Ms. Thompson worked at the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, FDIC, for more than 23 years in a variety of leadership positions, including the Director of Division of Risk Management Supervision. During her time at FDIC, Ms. Thompson led the agency's examination and enforcement program for risk management and consumer protection. At the height of the financial crisis, she also led the FDIC's outreach initiatives in response to a crisis of consumer confidence in the banking system. Her experience ranges from supervision of consumer protection, risk management, and consumer outreach activities. Ms. Thompson is a graduate of Howard University in Washington, D.C. Everyone, please help me welcome Ms. Thompson to this session. Welcome.
Great.
So, Ms. Thompson, before we get going, I'd like to ask you a quick question.
Say, Marcos, let me
Yes,
just
ma'am.
say a few words about
Sure,
Sandra
of course.
before we get started in our robust questions. I want our audience to know that not only is Sandra a powerful leader in the government with our GSEs around homeownership, mortgages, and whatever, she is a person who really, truly cares. She's a person who is very down to earth, who is real, who is about business, who knows how to orchestrate movements and ideas through not only the political atmosphere, but the government and with the people. So, as Sandra is there as acting director of FHFA, and she's been at FHFA for many years, I just want everyone to know that we're dealing not with not with the typical, if you will, the typical government person who is 100% led by everything around them. But Sandra is, her feelings about the people, her feelings are real. This didn't just come with FHFA or FDIC or any of that. She's always had a personal commitment to people of color, to doing the right thing, to increasing home ownership. And the housing supply issue has been at top of mind for her for years. So I wanted to certainly let everyone know that not only are we talking about a leader of our government entities, but it's the power that she brings to the leadership, the power of the people, so to say, that she brings to this leadership that we really, really, really appreciate. So we're so pleased to have Sandra here, not only with us today, but in general, in working in our industry. So with that in mind, Marcos, I want to turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Marcia. And Sandra, again, welcome. It's a great pleasure to have you. So let me ask you this. You grew up in the South Side of Chicago, right? And so tell us a little bit about your path from South Side of Chicago through the private sector, through your work at FDIC, and now, as acting director of FHFA.
So sure. Well, first, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to be with you today. I really wanted to make sure that I was present and attended this very important summit because, like Marcia said, this topic is really, personally important to me. And I just can't think of a better audience to really share some of the initiatives that we're working on here at FHFA through Fannie and Freddie. But I do want to thank Marcia for that wonderful introduction. And I'm going to take you on the road with me because I tell you, it doesn't get much better than that. But I've known Marcia for a very long time, probably longer than either of us would like to admit.
Right.
And, we've worked together on several issues, no matter where I've worked, actually. And I just think that she's a great person, very knowledgeable, and also very committed to not just African-American and Latino home ownership, but just generational wealth and starting early, understanding, what equity means and, what banking means, and just making sure that our communities are empowered. But just by way of background, Marcos, you mentioned the South Side of Chicago. I am a proud representative of the Chicago public school system. I went to public schools in Chicago my entire life growing up. My mother was a school teacher. My dad worked at U.S. Steel, when it was in Chicago years and years ago. And you also mentioned my beloved Howard University, where I left Chicago and went to Howard and majored in business and finance and insurance. And after I graduated from Howard, I went to Milwaukee and worked at Northwestern Mutual for a number of years as a computer programmer on their mortgage system, and left there and went to Goldman Sachs in New York and was working at Goldman for many, many years in their mortgage finance department, and left there and came to Washington with my then 2 children and husband, and started my career here in federal government. Although I would say that when I left Goldman, I took off for 8 months before I started. I had a brand new baby, actually my second child, and I thought I'd spend some time with them. And I ended up, spending time with them and also learning how to play golf. And so that was a really interesting time for me. But, coming to Washington has just been a godsend. I've had the opportunity to work in public service for over 30 years. I spent 23 years at the FDIC and 8 years, almost 9 now, here at FHFA, and just have had just incredible opportunities to impact public policy as it relates to banking issues and now housing issues. And I'm just thrilled to be able to be here at this point in time in this environment where issues of equity are being talked about and acted upon, because we certainly have been having this conversation for many, many years. And so just to be here today and to be able to not just come up with, develop, think about, but be able to implement and execute, things that'll really make a difference in communities of color is just of paramount importance to me. And I think, now is probably as good a time as it's ever been when I see different types of people committed to these housing issues. If we can't do it now, then it's going to be a long time before I'll have the confidence that it'll ever get done. But I do believe that the timing is right. And I think we need to get some things done, and more than conversations, but really, really try to do things to move the needle so that we can impact this racial equity gap through home ownership primarily.
Thank you. So you've been very busy, and obviously, especially now at FHFA. But you mentioned you've been kind of targeting and focusing on racial homeownership gap, and I agree. You're 100% correct. Now is the time to do it. There's momentum. There's capacity. People like you in positions of power that can actually make things happen. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the specifics of these actions that you've taken and are trying to accomplish?
Oh, sure. I am, again, very focused on really trying to close the racial equity gap through responsible and sustainable home ownership. And I say that because the word sustainability sometimes gets left out of the conversation. People know the word affordability, but we don't necessarily talk about sustainability very much. And that's really important to me because it really doesn't make sense to provide home ownership opportunities for borrowers in loans that they don't understand and loans that they can't afford. We saw what happened, during the last recession, the Great Recession in 2008, 2009, where people were in homes and they had these predatory products, and it resulted in more foreclosures. And of course, the communities of color were impacted, in a really dramatic way. So much so that all of the gains in home ownership that had been made over the years were lost, during that Great Recession. And so we are starting at ground zero. So sustainability is a big part of the message that I'd really like to just talk about today. I really want to make sure that when people buy a home, they work really hard to come up with the down payment and to make those payments. And it is so important that they keep those homes, that, it's not a really good solution for anybody to put a borrower in a loan that's not sustainable. The borrower loses, the servicers, investors, every participant in the process is impacted by those bad decisions. And so what we've done at FHFA, we serve as the regulator for Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and the Federal Home Loan Banks. We've asked Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac to come up with equitable housing plans so that we can identify and articulate some of the barriers that communities of color in particular have had in terms of sustainable home ownership. And we've also asked for strategies to address those barriers and remove those barriers. And we've asked for public input on what we're trying to do. This is the first time that, in at least my history, we've talked about equity in this way, in a real way. It's the first time we've talked about equity and sustainability together. And so we are really trying to be intentional about what we do. We're trying to be transparent about how we're going to move the needle. And we want to get input because certainly, as you well know, in Washington, we don't know everything, especially when we're trying to implement policies and practices. And so we want to get input. We want to get feedback. And I'd ask people, we're going to publish the plans that both enterprises are going to submit. They're due at the end of December, and we're going to publish them early next year. And just want to make sure that we get a lot of public input. We've asked for the public to provide thoughts and ideas into the plans that Fannie and Freddie are developing. We're going to publish those plans, and then we're going to execute against those plans. And what's been really interesting to me are the people that have responded and provided information. It's been more than, community advocates. It's been people that historically have been focused on safety and soundness, and it's just run the gamut. So we have an active listening audience here about this issue. We've got people that really want to be helpful as we try to move the needle. And that's, larger financial institutions, think tanks, researchers, banks, non-banks, and the like. We just have a lot of input. And so if we can't do it now, then I really just don't know what to think. But I'm excited about it, and I really can't wait to see where we're going to end up. And I want to make sure that what we do is measurable, that we have these plans, but that we have things that we can execute so that we know here's where we are today. We've implemented these activities and we've moved the needle, because if it's not measurable, then it doesn't really count as just conversation. One more thing I did want to mention that we've done a little bit differently is we have Fannie and Freddie have affordable housing goals, and they have to make loans to people with certain, area median incomes, right? and they have to make loans in certain areas. One of the things that we did this year, which is a little bit different, is we created a new goal. It's actually a sub goal where we are asking the enterprises to purchase loans in areas that are designated minority census tracts. So we've asked them to have 10% of their acquisitions have to be in minority census tracts. And what makes that so interesting is previously we had asked them to purchase loans in low income areas. And if you look around Washington, which is where we are, or even go to Chicago, you'll see a lot of non-minorities moving into areas that were typically or historically minority areas. And we want to make sure that the enterprises are supporting home ownership in communities that were established, by the people who built those communities. And so we really need to think about, what we're doing and how we're doing it. And I just believe that we are going to really be engaged with just moving the needle and changing the thinking about this issue of equity.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. So if I might chime in and then, look, kudos to you, Sandra. I mean, you're right. The time is now. If we don't make measurable achievements now, it's going to go past us and we're going to be doing the same old, same old. So, it is really great to know that you are putting a little bit more pressure or renewing the thinking of the GSEs to kind of focus on helping the people that really are a part of their mission. So thank you so much for that. Certainly, without question, when you talk about barriers to homeownership, one barrier, of course, is that when these homeowners, and this is just a statement, I'll get back into the question, but when these homeowners get into a problem, they don't know who to go to.
Mhm.
And we've talked about the value of counseling organizations, and I have also met with both of the GSEs and several of the federal home loan banks to really look if they could work more diligently to help to build partnerships between the lenders that they work with, or developers or whomever that they're working with, and these nonprofit organizations, developers like Marcos, who is doing housing supply, the people who can help to sustain these borrowers, but the borrowers need to know that we exist. I mean, and so a big problem, of course, is that the lenders don't know that we exist, or either they think that the only people that counseling organizations work with are very, very, very low income. Well, as you have addressed, look, the reality is that many people of color who are viewed as middle income and might be viewed as affluent, they don't feel that way. They feel that they are moderate income. They're also trying to figure out how to move from paycheck to paycheck, maybe not in the way they did, years ago. But the bottom line is that none of us can do this alone, not even the lenders with all their millions and billions of dollars, because they can't reach the hearts and the minds of the people in the ways that this Black and Latino organization can, and other counseling organizations can. Well, look, I'm speaking to the choir with you, on these things, no question about it. But clearly, if the GSEs could do more to bridge the gap of building the relationships between the nonprofits and the for-profits, it would be of service to the lending communities that they are working with. My question for you is, tell tell us about now. Obviously, the renewed thinking is really important. But tell us one thing that you're very proud of that you have done or you have begun to implement, other than the renewed thinking that your predecessor did not have in place.
I've been in government for a really long time, and I just believe that, we are public servants, number one. And um, I, I I would say that, when you build upon whatever, if you're at the head of an agency, and I've seen this at the FDIC where I worked for, 7 different chairmen, different parties, and even here at FHFA, where I've worked for, 4 different acting directors or actual directors, and you build upon what the person before you has done, because we're working not for our own, personal ideals or ideology. We're working on behalf of, the people that are, part of the United States. And I'm talking united and everybody. And
Absolutely.
Fannie and Freddie in particular, we have a mandate that Congress put in place to provide, safe, decent, affordable access across the country to all borrowers, all eligible and qualified borrowers. And so I don't necessarily compare myself or the things that I'm doing to, what my predecessor did. But I think that, at where we are at this point in time in our nation, I believe that the equitable homeownership plans are one thing that, the nation is now focused on equity. And I think Fannie and Freddie and the home loan banks ought to be focused on, equity as well. One of the things that I've done that I'm particularly proud of is signing an MOU, a memorandum of understanding, with our neighbors across the street at HUD. Secretary Fudge and I signed an MOU where we're going to be working together collaboratively. And when you think about the mortgage system, when you think about FHA and VA and HUD, and then Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, that's a huge part of, our nation's, GDP. And so to have us working together on different initiatives, in particular, fair lending and implementing the Fair Housing Act for the mortgage participants, I think that's really historic, and it hasn't been done before. And I'm very proud of that. And I couldn't find a more supportive person than Secretary Fudge, who really goes out of her way to, identify ways we can work together to be helpful and, sharing information and just providing some thought leadership into this area of housing in this new day and age. So I am particularly thrilled with the MOU that we signed with HUD in that area. So
that is fantastic. That is fantastic. We already feel like we're moving forward. So I know, look, we want to talk about housing supply. That's a huge limitation to housing and homeownership. What is FHFA doing with the GSEs and others to really help to solve this problem?
Sure. Well, supply is a huge issue, and it gets exacerbated by the affordability issue. So one of the things that we've done is we've asked Fannie and Freddie, to look at ways they can provide liquidity to certain types of homes that may not be as popular right now or as prevalent as other types of homes. So an example would be the accessory dwelling units, those homes that, I don't know if you've been in, certain neighborhoods where there's a house and then there's like a gatehouse or a mother-in-law house or mother-in-law apartment or whatever. But we've asked them to take a look at, financing different property types. We've also asked them to think about manufactured housing, Because when people think about manufactured housing, sometimes they're getting the wrong ideas and they're thinking, trailers. But if you go to different parts of the country, you can't really tell a manufactured home from a stick-built home. But some of the obstacles that we run into are some of the local ordinances that prohibit certain types of dwellings in their specific locations. And so we're looking at that as well. We're also looking at ways to think about affordability. FHFA just released the new conforming loan limits for 2022. And in 1 year, we've seen home prices just skyrocket. And year over year, it was, I think the number was like 18.5%. That's a huge acceleration of value for home prices. And what happens is, if you're a first-time home buyer, or if you're, low to moderate income and you can only afford a certain amount, the supply issue, because it's so acute, it really exacerbates the affordability issue for first-time home buyers. I would hate to be a first-time home buyer, during this pricing increase, because things are just not affordable for first-time home buyers or first generational home buyers. And so we've asked Fannie and Freddie to take a look to see what they can do, but it's a huge issue that really does need to be addressed. And we were looking at the real estate owned portfolio of both Fannie and Freddie. And between the two, nationwide, they've got less than 9,000 loans. I also have looked at some of the balance sheets of the larger banks, and they've got, shrinking REO portfolios. So this supply issue is real. And whatever we can do to, move that needle would be really helpful too. But it really exacerbates the problem when you're talking about entry-level home ownership.
Absolutely. Marcus, I know this is, you're loving this conversation, you and many of the other folks that's listening on our our event today, Al and more. This is an area that we all want to tackle. And one thing for sure, Sandra, that we want to do, and I'll turn it back over to you, Marcos, is to go to the people with outreach, to let them know, look, while we're trying to solve this problem, let's get you prepared, because we still have a huge denial issue among people of color. So we need to work together once again, to get our folks, anybody, just prepared, so that when the supply, improves, people can go in and get approved. And so this is certainly something we can do right now as an industry. It's something that we're all concerned about. Marcos, I know the supply, you're just burning that.
Yes.
Burning to try to get in on this subject. So I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Yeah, just a couple of comments, Ms. Thompson. Yesterday there was HUD closed out its bid process for the HECM loans, right? And I know that Fannie just closed one out in September, I believe it was, and it was a $1.8 billion pool of assets that were sold. And so I want to kind of address two things with that, and just really a comment, is that if more nonprofits and more organizations like ourselves got involved in that process, the two things could happen. The occupied units, obviously, we require when we buy loans, and we've been buying them for about 10 years. When we buy loans, we mandate within our system that there's a housing counselor, third party, disinterested housing counselor that works with the family. And so we have them set up with our servicer and like tri-party agreements. And that way they can work to the benefit of the homeowner, and we as the investor can do whatever we need to do to keep them in the home. And on the vacant ones, in our listings, we have an 800 number that we have our realtors put into the MLS system for that qualified home buyer to get free housing counseling services. And so those are two ways that we address that. But the bigger, broader question about the supply is we're buying these for that, to address that issue is if we, the nonprofits, have control of
Mhm.
the notes, especially the vacants that we know are going to foreclose, then we're creating our own supply of REO assets. And so
Mhm.
I just wanted to kind of share that with you, so that you know that
Right.
not just us, but there are now other
Mhm.
organizations getting into the space. And
Mhm.
I really think that it would be important to do more of that.
Mhm.
So
So,
before I ask the question, do you want to come
yeah,
back?
actually had a couple of things. I'm actually taking notes while you're talking. So, just for the nonprofits, I mean, certainly owner occupancy is like critical to us. And these investors coming in, buying all these properties is just a huge issue, especially in, communities of color and especially these cash buyers. And that's a whole nother conversation that we can have. But
Yes.
one of the things that we've done is we've increased the amount of time that we give to nonprofits in our First Look program from 30 days to 45 days. And we are hopeful that, nonprofits who know the neighborhoods, who know the communities, who know the people, and can help, with counseling the borrowers, can help get, borrowers into these homes on a sustainable basis. The vacant properties is a huge issue. And I know years ago we had a program that looked at, vacant properties and with a focus on neighborhood stabilization, because we really understand, the impact that a vacant property has on a neighborhood.
Right.
And so just making sure that we address those issues is really, really important. And so I'm really interested in following up with you guys on, both the, non-performing loans, the first look property, and the vacant properties, and then just kind of walk you through what the enterprises are doing in that regard. But there's two things that I wanted to say before you ask your question. I did want to mention that one of the things that Fannie Mae has done and Freddie Mac is going to do is we're taking into consideration in the underwriting models that they use 12 months positive payments for renters, because when you've got a thin file, and especially if you are low, you have low to median income, and this is particularly true in communities of color, they're
Mhm.
thin credit files. And what hasn't been taken into consideration are people who are making their rent payments every single month. And you know that the mortgage payment or the rent payment is the biggest part in most households. It's the biggest expense that people have. So why shouldn't people get credit for the mortgage, on time rental payments? And so those are some changes that Fannie and Freddie are going to make. And we're hopeful that that will also be something that'll move the needle in terms of making sure that, the credit underwriting process takes into account positive rental payments. So I did want to mention that. And the other thing that I want to mention is this the refinance programs that Fannie and Freddie have for low AMI borrowers. For low to moderate income borrowers, Fannie and Freddie have refinance programs. When I looked at the Fannie and Freddie database, there's over 4 million borrowers who have loans with interest rates that are at least 60 basis points higher than the current interest rate. And I said this at the MBA, but it's particularly true when you look at some of the interest rates, and these loans go all the way back to 2000. People have not refinanced, and they've got loans in that start with 6% or more in a 2% or 3% interest rate environment. You can reduce your monthly expenses by so much. And I say that to raise that for your perspective, Marcia, because this is another area where counseling can help,
Yeah.
not just when you get in trouble, but you've got people that have homes, but they're paying these exorbitant interest rates, and they've been paying on time, but they should be able to reduce their interest rates and maybe to a shorter term, because if you've been paying since 2000, and 21 years later, you've got this really high interest rate. You don't want a 30-year mortgage. You might want a 15-year or a shorter term mortgage. So whatever we can do to help households reduce their expenses, and especially the households that need it most, are really, really important. And so just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you.
Excellent.
And just in closing, what gives you hope that we'll be able to positively address this homeownership gap and these inequalities that we've been talking about?
Well, the thing that gives me hope is, now it's more than just you, me, and Marcia, people that look like us and think like us and have the background that we have. I mean, I live on the real south side of Chicago. I don't, even today, when I go visit my parents who live in the same house that, I grew up in, it is important to me when I see homes that are boarded up, homes that are vacant, and the impact that it has on the neighborhood. And so this is really kind of personal. But what gives me hope is that there are lots of people that don't necessarily look like us that appear to be and have started engaging on this issue in a real and meaningful way. And, there are a number of initiatives that are taking place across the country by lots of different types of people with different backgrounds and people who are supposedly putting the money where their mouth is. So we'll just wait and see, because we certainly have a lot of ideas for them to help us with this issue. And I'm just really looking forward to this time next year having this conversation to talk about how far we've come and what we've done, since these plans have been put in place.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Well, look, this has been a wonderful conversation. I'm not sure what our time is. I know you need to jump off, but Sandra, I must say that having you, having Secretary Fudge and many others in place gives us hope that things will change and that things will improve. I think we have found that that the momentum is going in the right direction, and people want to do better. And so our job, certainly through Al and many other groups around, we want to provide ideas that are implementable, ideas that will not only strengthen these companies profitably, but at the end of the day, when the people are helped, everybody wins. And this is really the idea. So having you in the position that you are in and many others really does give us a lift, if you will. And certainly, look, we want to talk to you next year, same time, same place. At this conference. And we want to be able to have you tell us the progress that's been made with the GSEs, and also we didn't even talk about the Federal Home Loan Banks, but progress that needs to be made there. I am just thrilled, girl. I completely forgot the fact that you went to Howard. So the HBCU thing is wonderful for us, and just to stimulate the hopes and dreams of people like all of us, whether they're white, black, blue, everybody. These are everyday people who want to do better. So we are so proud of you, and anything that we need to do to make sure that that we follow the guidelines that you would want. And so we want you to be successful. We want to be successful. And we want our folks and our communities to be successful. So
that is true. You're very welcome. If you could please thank Al for giving me the opportunity to be here today. And if you guys could send me kind of the questions from the chat, because I wasn't able to get to any of them, and there were some suggestions, but if you guys could send them to me afterwards, I really would appreciate it. And I would ask you to hold me accountable. So
we'll definitely do that.
Thank you. See you guys later.
Thank you.
We're here to serve if you need us.
Great. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Wow, that was awesome. We do have some questions in the chat, but before we do that, can we go ahead and invite the other roundtable panelists? Dina, how are you? Reverend, how are you doing?
Hello there, Marcos.
Hello, Jules.
Good. How everyone? For sure, guys, we need to respond we need to respond to her in writing, not just with the questions, but with ideas that we have.
Yeah.
Not only from the summit today, but from the whole alliance, point by point ideas. Because very interestingly, um, Fannie and Freddie are working. They're creating some new strategies. But I wonder how many people on the ground, how many organizations have been tapped, how many pastors have been spoken to even get ideas. Because unless they are infused with ideas of what's happening on the ground, what happens is that it's the same old, same old. So I love you all's thoughts on that, and certainly a way for us to move forward.
Hey, Marcia, you and Marcos alluded to some things that were really great, and I was so happy and pleased to see Sandra expound on some of the great things that are happening on that level of government in the housing areas. One thing that you said that really lit my brain up when you guys talked about the sustainability piece. Giving loans that are not sustainable are setting people up to fail. We can no longer do that. And I know we have programs and nonprofits that are working towards helping to teach our young people as soon as possible about home buying tactics and requirements, and also connecting them to our home buyers to job training, job placement, and in Detroit in particular, transportation. Because if you can't get to your job, you can't get your paycheck to pay the mortgage. And of course, they talked about those adjustable rate mortgages and understanding all of those things that kind of set us back a while ago. So when you guys talked about the nonprofit sector teaming up with the government in that perspective, I think that's an important piece.
Yeah. And Pastor Bell, if I may just say something, you said a key word right there. You said connected, right? One of the things that we have done and have failed, in my opinion, at is connectivity, right? For the longest time, we have each worked in our little geographic bubble, right? And we like, oh wow, we're doing things here, but the rest of the country isn't getting the impact of our hard work. And I think now is the time for us to all connect, not just in Baltimore, not just in Detroit, not just in Illinois, but in the entire country. And together we're a much louder voice. And one of the things that Marcia talked about that acting director Thompson said was, right now they're taking questions and suggestions on how to respond to some of these issues. How many people know that? Right? I think it's important for us to get that message out so that those folks can respond, and we'll have greater impact in driving change. And I agree 100% with her. Now is the time to do it. Everything is aligned for this change to address this home ownership gap, this racial wealth gap, this inequality. And I think now's the time. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. Sorry, Jules.
Go ahead, Dina.
I said my mind was just racing, Marcos, especially with that bid process yesterday. Okay. Because it was just the thought of just the processes we've gone through with the BPOs, trying to the Fannie Mae second look, the prices are just not right, and once they go back to the regular market, the prices went down, so I said there's so many issues that we have that, I was busting to talk to Sandra Thompson, right? But you guys handle it so beautifully. You really handle it beautifully.
Yeah, and I think that there are some takeaways for us, because I heard her clearly say that they're going to come out with their report by February, early 2022. And so my question was, is that a final report, or is that a report for input and feedback? And so do we have to try to get feedback before they put it out, or are they putting it out in a draft form where they are looking for feedback? So I think that's part of our follow-up. And then the other thing that I thought was very interesting, that they're being innovative. And And I appreciated Director Thompson's connectivity to the community. And
Right.
so, when she talked about going home to her parents and seeing boarded homes, and that affects her. Well, those are the communities that we live in.
That's
And
right.
part of the challenge is, how do we get our people into these houses? And when you have so many speculators that are coming into the community, getting access because they have access to capital, which we don't. And then they're able to effectively compete in these bids and get these houses and pretty much take them right from underneath the people who are doing the work in community. And so I think there has to be some, priority given to nonprofits and developers, Black and brown developers that are working within communities that are committed to making sure that Indigenous individuals in those communities are able to stay in those communities. Because unfortunately, we're being displaced and our communities are completely changing, and our history, culture, and heritage is being erased. And that is
Absolutely.
not okay.
Absolutely.
Amen.
Absolutely. Without question, in our response to her, which hopefully Al is listening, because we need him to put that pen to paper to write up some things on that we can all agree with. I think number one, we need to have our own say. Then the GSEs are going to have their say. And then we need to come back maybe, sometimes in the first quarter and ask her, look, allow us to respond to what the GSEs are proposing. And let's just see what the marriage is between what they're talking about and what we're talking about. Because Jules, your point is so great. But at the end of the day, do they really care? I mean, that's the other question. We know that businesses, these lenders, all of them, even the GSEs, they're in business to make money.
Yeah.
And the question that we have, I mean, the point that we need to get to the table is that you can make money and do good at the same time.
There you go.
And maybe it's not just with billions of dollars, but let's just start with some pilots. Put aside X amount of money in different cities, particularly in the Baltimores and the Detroits. Put aside X amount of money and build relationships with organizations. I mean, it's going to take a marriage,
That's right.
a marriage between us and them. People do business with people.
That's right.
That's just at the end of the day. We don't do business with companies. We do business with people. And if we can sort of come together as business leaders, because this is critical, that the GSEs, these lenders, these big corporations need to see us as business people.
That's right.
Because that is what we are. We're running legitimate businesses that will not only help them, but in fact, primarily help them, because through us, they then get to the people that they want to serve. They then hear the voice of the people from us in a way that we can articulate it for them. And look, at the end of the day, we all want to make money. We all want to do well. We got that. We're all in business. But in order for them to do even better and manifest this whole idea of racial equity, we've got to come together. We have got to come together, because look, for those of us that remember the Black Power movement back years ago, I was much younger then, but look, that stuff waned after a couple of years. It was gone and everybody was on to something else. Sandra is exactly right. This is our time. We have to optimize on our position as nonprofit leaders, as faith-based leaders, as community leaders. We have to even for us, we have to up our own stature and get these guys to understand that, look, you're not up here and we're down here. We are equal. We
That's
are
right.
equal. We're all about business. We're just in a different type of business. But the reality is that we are in the business of influencing and elevating the communities that you want to serve.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Amen. Marcia, you over there preaching now. I'm gonna have to have you come to the church.
Say amen.
But
I'm getting that from Dina.
but you know what? We say in the church, what the devil meant for evil, God meant for good. And throughout this pandemic, this has allowed us to have an economic summit where we are coming together.
Yes.
And now we have an opportunity to combine and connect. And like you said, Al knows how to put this thing to the paper correctly so that we can get all of our questions answered, our issues addressed, because like this gentrification and these different things that's going on in our cities, these things have to be known to the federal government and those government agencies. In particular, we're fighting right now in Detroit because the people were overtaxed in Detroit and their homes were taken in the auction. And then after they reassessed the taxes and they found out that they were overtaxed, all the city said was, "I'm sorry." But
They're still in your house.
Where people are displaced, they don't have homes anymore. So these types of things cannot continue to go on without us saying something. And it's so great that we are all together. We can come as one large organizations together representing all the people. And we definitely want to make sure we address those questions in the chat so that we can make sure those things go up to Sister Thompson as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
But that's a reparations moment, Pastor Bell. Come on now. Y'all gonna give them a brand new house. Hey, you gotta take in a broke down house, but you're gonna give them a brand new house.
Yeah,
exactly.
Look,
in the area y'all trying to gentrify.
Yeah, look, we be marching for real. Let me know. Get on the plane.
There are some questions there. We need to make sure we capture those. But
yes, absolutely, absolutely.
All of us, right? Is I honestly think we need to bring our ideas and suggestions, and to your point, Pastor Bell, put them together. And Al is the master of delivery, right? And if we, give this stuff to Al, he'll make it happen, right? It will be heard, right?
Yeah.
One of the things that I think we need to address is the counseling component, right? And the disconnection between the struggling home buyer and the glass tower investor, right? Because these guys get these loans and then they bundle them up and they put them in a mortgage-backed security, and then they send it to a servicer and it's locked up in a GIC. You can't get it out unless you get foreclosed. There's no way to get it out. There's no mention of housing counseling services in those.
Absolutely.
If we require that they not ask that they do it or consider doing it, require that every servicer provides every distressed borrower the moment they're late with a counselor.
Absolutely.
To provide them service, we'll have less default delinquency.
Absolutely.
And you know what? The good news about it, at the end of the day, they might fight it at first, but at the end of the day, it's good for them. Why? Because it's good business. What's better? Go through foreclosure, go through eviction, go through all that process, or pay a housing counseling organization $1,000 per family, get that family adjusted, put them back into a regular paying format. They didn't spend any money except $1,000. That homeowner got to keep their home. That mortgage stays in that GIC, and the counseling service did their job. So we got to get ideas and input them now that we have the chance.
Marcos, you're absolutely right. There are multiple strategies, not just one, multiple from appraisal biases. There's such a long list that from every component, every area that's not being addressed. And, we go after one or the other. I agree with you. Counseling is our bedrock. So I totally agree. But I also think about the appraisals. I think about how they jack up the prices for us, that we can't access financing to buy. So we're victims of the investors as well, right? I mean, there's such a long laundry list and thank God for Al that he brought us all together. Okay, Marcos introduced me to Al. But now we're West, East, South, we're all together. So we've already started this process. Okay, and we
So
certainly go on, Marcia.
no, and I'm going to have to just get off, guys, in just a minute. But I just want to say kudos to all of you, and Al, and all of the other groups that are trying to make a difference. At the end of the day, look, the problems have existed for Black and brown and even yellow people forever. I
Yes.
mean, we know what the problems are. We have to do something. We have to do something. We've got to create some solutions that are workable and measurable. We have to have a voice. So this summit provides a voice. And Al has really gotten some heavy duty folks, on here. And the CEOs, as an example, need to hear the voice. So often, we're talking to their people and they're trying to do good, but they got to keep their job.
That's right.
And at the
That's
end
right.
of the day, we need to talk to the top person so that they can understand that we also are about business. We understand where you're coming from. You're trying to be profitable. You got to pay your stockholders, but also we have, as nonprofits, we don't have to pay stockholders, but there is a mission, there is a drive that we have to accomplish as people, not just Black and brown people, but as businesses. We are on a mission also to do better, we got to be successful ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we need to partner in order to do so. So as I leave, and I've got to just speak, I just want to say, guys, my next call or meeting, my next webinar is with a group of HBCU students. I just say that, look, for us, we know we haven't gotten where we want to go, but also it is time for us to also reach back. We have to reach back and pull other folks up. Kids, a lot of these young people, they don't know anything about housing supply. And Jules, she's hired people, students from Morgan State in Baltimore. This is what we have to do because our Black and brown kids are unexposed. They don't even know the opportunities. I just met a young man who graduated from Howard in 2019, graduated with $92,000 of student loans, and he took a job at Walmart. Now, Walmart is fine. It's no problem. But when you've got $92,000 of student loans, you need to be exposed to opportunities that are out there that's going to give you a living wage that's going to allow you to pay these bills. And nobody even knows. These kids don't know about the industry that we're in, the counseling, the development, the mortgage side. They don't see people in these industries. The only thing these Black and brown kids have heard about: bad credit, somebody being foreclosed on, somebody being turned down for a loan. We have to turn this around. We have to elevate the thinking of our young people as well as our own staff. And really move up and move forward together. I just think 2022 is going to be a good year for all of us.
It has to be. It has
Claim
to
to that, Pastor. What do you call it? Look, we got
2 minutes, so I just want to say,
our audience, we did have some questions in the panel, so I kind of wanted to at least acknowledge some of the great comments I saw in the panels. People are saying some really great stuff.
Yeah, I think we're going to record them. I think Q and team are going to write them down for us because we're supposed to send them to, Ms. Thompson. But we can also send them to the audience. And one thing I want to say is we got to teach our kids the difference between Walmart and Wall Street. We got to teach them the difference, between Fortnite, a video game, and reality. And the last thing I want to say is there are a million. I bet you there's a million business plans sitting on someone's shelf collecting dust. A business plan is worthless unless we act on it, and we have to act on this today
Absolutely.
and make sure
And
that
to
it's
act on it, we got to
not
think bigger and we've got to be better. So we're all good to go.
So,
Amen.
but remember what this is all about, right? Black and Latino Economic Summit. And so part of what we are doing is we are creating a nationwide accountability watchdog entity that is saying enough is enough. We're not going to take pennies anymore. We want our fair share, and that's all that we want. We are about business. We're not about handouts and hand-ups, but we want to be at the table. And
That's
Al
right.
has created a table for us to be at and for us to lead. And so that means we lead by creating
I'll see you
policy.
guys.
All right. See you, Marcia. That means
Bye-bye.
we lead by creating policy. That means we lead by actually being able to create new programs, innovation.
I gotta
We
go.
are an amazingly innovative people.
Yes.
And so the whole thing is being able to get our ideas up the food chain to the people who actually have resources and can apply them in a significant way and take them to scale. And so that really is what this is all about. And so I'm excited. I'm excited about all of the feedback that we've heard today. I'm excited, more importantly, about where we are going to go, because we are going to continue the conversation with Director Thompson, and we are going to continue to look and hold them accountable for making certain that they are embracing equity and that they are working appropriately within our communities.
Yes, we are. I want to apologize to our audience that we were never able to introduce ourselves. But I'm sure that if you go to any of the Black and Economic sites, you will see us and our backgrounds and our work. So we won't go there, Marcos. I know you're the lead host, so I'll let you wind this down.
Yeah, no, I think, the questions on there are awesome. And to your point, Dina, I wish we could have got to them, but this was so exciting and so fast and so powerful. And the only thing I want to say is you guys are exciting. I've met all of you. Jules, I don't think you and I have met in person, but I have met Pastor Bell. Dina and I have been working together for years. Marcia as well. And, you guys all do fabulous work. And we love you. I love you for it. The community that knows you loves you for it. And the community that doesn't know you will begin to love you for it going forward, because we are going to take this platform and make it national. Jules, you're 100% correct. This has to be a national message. It can't be an in my neighborhood, around my block, in my community message any longer the way it has been. We have to stand up, be heard loudly. And with Al, kind of bringing us together, that's going to happen. And so to the audience, we thank you. We love you. Keep coming, keep joining, keep working. Don't stop. Communicate with us. Let's make a louder, larger force, and let's get our voices heard in a different way, not just by going to the elections once or twice every 2 years, every 4 years, but by making change at policy and advocacy levels with people like, Ms. Thompson and Ms. Fudge and others across the country. So thank you, everyone.
I think we're rolling into our 12 o'clock workshop, which on home ownership with Bank of America.
Yep. See you there.
Join us.
See you guys later.
Everybody.